And once it's all done, this here is the finished product. So I've got all the bench tops covered. I've laid out some tiles here just to see what the configuration is going to be like. I've measured up my distance from one end to the other, divided that by 2, and that's going to give me a starting point right here in the middle. And the reason I do that is because when I get to the edges now, I'm going to have the same size cut on both sides, which is going to make things look a lot nicer and cleaner. With these tiles here, they're irregular in shape, which means that the edges aren't square. You can see that it's got a big wave on either edge. The face is textured and the back also isn't flat. So this one here rocks back and forward. It just simply means it's not designed to give you a dead, flat, crisp, level line. It's going to wave in and out. It's going to give it a rustic, natural kind of look. If you're using Moroccan tiles, which are handmade, good luck, have fun with that. You're going to have to butter every back of the tile, put it in, and you're going to have to just simply spend a lot more time. But these ones here, still, we need to eyeball everything because it dips in and out. Make sure that we're getting it as level as possible. That's why I've got my laser level here, just to give me a bit of a guide to make sure I'm not going out of whack too much. Now with the spacing here, I've played around with the different thicknesses of spacing for my grout line, and what I've decided to do is to use a spacer just as a guide. So I'm not going to actually leave it in there as a spacer. I'm just simply using it to score between the tiles, and that's going to make sure that I've got a minimum clearance and I'm not overblowing the grout lines out. Because it dips in and out, I want to keep my smallest grout line at 1.5 mil. Anywhere where it dips back in or out on the other side, it's going to come out just a little bit. It'll flare probably up to about 3 millimeters. So the maximum I should have is about 3 millimeters of spacing, and the minimum is going to be about 1.5. So in this case, we're going to be tiling straight onto plasterboard. So there's a couple things you need to keep in mind. Number one is if you have any raw joints or patchwork, make sure that you use a sealer first to make sure that you seal that surface, and that'll ensure that your adhesive actually sticks to the wall properly. Number two, don't overload tiles onto the wall. Don't exceed the weight limit. So every manufacturer has a different weight limit. In this particular case from CSR, the maximum we can load up our walls with tiles is 32 kilos per square meter. So as long as you're not exceeding 32 kilos per square meter with this particular product, you won't have any issues. I'm going to quickly mix up a small batch of adhesive and we're going to start tiling. So I'm using a 6mm trowel, and you've got two options. You can either apply it straight to the wall, or you can just simply butter the back of the actual tile itself. I'm also using a couple spaces on the bottom just to give it a bit of clearance from the bench top, and we're going to fill that in with silicone a little bit later on. Line it up with our center mark here, and we're also going to keep an eye on our laser level. So that's looking pretty good right there. We'll squeeze that one in, give it a couple twists. Make sure it's sitting nicely. That's looking pretty good right there. We can take out that excess material from the top. That way, if we want to have a break halfway through, we can leave it as is, come back, and we'll continue on, and we don't have any crusty little bits of adhesive on the wall that we need to remove. So that's looking pretty good. We'll just continue on. Now, like I said, with the gap here, we're going to take our little 1.5mm spacer. Hold this one here in place, and I'm just going to slide this one here all the way down. That's going to make sure that I've got a minimum of 1.5mm, and you can see there where it bows just a little bit on top. That's now out at about 2.5mm. So that one there's sitting nice and perfect. We'll move on over to the next one. Alright, so the first level is now complete. This is the worst part of the whole process because you need to get everything level and lined up, plus leaving a gap on the bottom with a little bit of clearance there. Now that we've got this section here, everything will go a lot faster and we can just work our way straight up. I'm just going to line this laser level here right on the joint there. So I'll start off in the middle once again, and I'll work my way out on both sides and just continue along. Hopefully another hour or so and this whole section here should be complete. So once the tiling's complete, this is what it ends up looking like. That laser level made the world of difference. I was able to keep everything nice and consistent with those grout lines. Even with the regular tiles, everything's looking pretty spot on at the moment. So I've got some grout mixed up. This here is the brand and the color that we're using today in case anybody out there is interested. All you need is a rubber float like this one here. This is going to help you spread the material out over the tiles and push it into the joint. You want to go on a bit of a diagonal action. That way you're going to make sure you're pushing it into the joint. Let it sit for about 10-15 minutes. It'll start to form a white haze over the top. At that point, you take a wet sponge and you want to just remove that excess material off the top of the tiles. It's a very simple process. You're going to have to repeat the cleaning process a couple times until your tiles are actually nice and clean and you've got a nice clean grout line. So apply the grout to the wall, go up on a bit of a diagonal action. You can hear it squeaking away because these are gloss tiles and the float is rubber. So you want to just push that material all throughout. Sweep over the top on a bit of a diagonal action. And that's going to make sure that you've pushed everything into that joint line. Repeat that process all throughout here. So you can see that it's starting to form a haze. You want to take your sponge at this point. Once again, go on a diagonal action. And what you're going to do is not only remove that excess material that's on the surface of the tile, but you're also going to smooth out these grout lines. So just go in a couple different directions. Don't do it too much because you want to not remove that grout out of the grout line. You might have to repeat the process 4 or 5 times. And for your final clean, you can use a little bit of cleaning vinegar and some warm water. That's going to be the best way to clean off your tiles. But for now, we'll let this one here sit for a bit, build a haze, and then we'll repeat the process a few times until everything's nice and clean. So it's now the following day. This is what it ends up looking like once it's all dry and everything's been cleaned up. I'm really happy with the tiling work. The bench top looks awesome. The only issue that I'm having is putting them both together. I'm not too sure if it actually works or not. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Worst case scenario, a little bit down the track, I might have to do a video on how to tile on top of tiles if by the end of this I'm still not happy with it. But I think once we put the tap, the knobs and also the sink in, it might change things around a bit. And once it's all done, this here is the finished product. I'm super impressed with this.